why we have That is why we have this mentorship program, because we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask your specific questions and get answers that are really going to be customized to you and your background. We are recording this presentation, and the video will be available on the Judicial Mentor web pages for both Monterey County Superior Court and the Santa Clara County Superior Court. In a moment, we're going to hear from our panelists and Judicial Appointment Secretary Luis Cespedes. Our panelists also include Judges Nancy de la Peña, Judge Nahal Iravani Sani, Judge Omar Rodriguez, and Judge Vanessa Vallarta. I just want to give you a little background, though, on what is the California Judicial Mentor Program, which sometimes we call affectionately C-JUMP. In July 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom announced the formation of the California Judicial Mentor Program, a statewide undertaking between the executive and judicial branches to advance the shared goal of an inclusive judiciary that reflects California's diversity. This includes an appellate court mentor program and a trial court mentor program. The initiative aims to demystify the appellate and trial court application processes and to improve transparency and accessibility for all members of the legal community throughout California, fostering the development of a qualified and diverse judicial applicant pool. Now, in February 2022, C-JUMP presented a webinar that gives all the details about the judicial application process. In that webinar, one hears from local mentor programs, as well as the Judicial Nominee Evaluation Commission and Secretary Cespedes. The link to that video is included in the chat, and I'll keep putting it in the chat so that people can access that link, and it's going to be in my background. After I stop speaking, I'm going to close my privacy screen, so you'll be able to access the links without my head in the way. So we don't want to repeat what you can already access, and some of you may have already attended that webinar, so we're going to have a little different spin today. Also, in March, just a couple weeks ago, C-JUMP presented a webinar hosted by the Los Angeles Superior Court, and again, the Secretary presented along with justices of the Supreme Court and Appellate Court, as well as the trial courts. That specifically focused on the imposter phenomenon and how we get in our own way because we don't feel we deserve this job, and so we don't push send on our application. So that link is not yet available, but it will be. So you've got a link to how does this process work, a link to you really should do this, you're worthy of this job. And so today what we're going to focus on is how do you access the mentors on the local level, and what's the job like? How can we excite you so that you do push send on your application? And we're going to specifically focus on the South Bay Area region. So the courts of Monterey, San Benito, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz are represented, but certainly the information that we give will be applicable to how to access your local mentor programs. So with that, I'm going to turn to introductions. And while I'll introduce Secretary Cespedes, we're going to go first to our judge panelists, and we're going to ask them, starting with Judge Vallarta, then Judge Iravani Sani, then Judge De La Peña, and then Judge Rodriguez. We're going to ask them to answer 3 questions, maybe 4 questions, which is, what court are you on? Why did you join the court? What surprised you about the job when you joined? And name one thing that you like the best about this job. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So Judge Vallarta, would you please start us off?
Judge Vallarta, you're muted.
Thank you, Judge Yu. Sorry about that. I had muted myself. It's an honor to be here. I'm Judge Vallarta, and I'm privileged to serve on the Monterey County Superior Court. I was appointed in December of 2013. And so I have been serving for approximately 9 years. I'm currently in a civil trial court assignment. And just a brief snapshot of our county. We're a county of about 440,000 souls, and we have demographically, we are approximately 64% Hispanic or Latino, and the balance white and other ethnicities. And we have just a wide range demographically from very affluent areas like Pebble Beach and Carmel, and some very impoverished areas like Pajaro that was recently impacted so deeply by the floods that we've suffered. That being said, it is been, just my great joy to serve as a judge for these past few years. And one of the things that I think, I'll just say surprised me, I don't know if it surprised me, but was the paradox of being a judge. On the one hand, you have this extraordinary freedom to do what you think is the right thing. And on the other hand, you have the constraints of being bound by case law and statutes that often really are these big giant guardrails on what a judge can or cannot do. So you're constantly sort of balancing that calling to be yourself and to bring your experience and training to the job, and yet we have to operate within the rule of law, which is, of course, what we're all dedicated to. The one thing that I love the most about the job is the opportunity really to help parties peacefully resolve their disputes. And that can be done in everything from a settlement conference to a jury trial. And it's been just my pleasure to get to do all of those things. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Judge Iravani Sani.
Thank you, Judge Vallarta. Hello, everyone. I'm Nahal Iravani Sani. I'm a judge in Santa Clara County Superior Court. I'm currently serving in our criminal division, doing felony trials and preliminary examinations. I was appointed to the bench by Governor Brown in late 2017 and took the bench in early January 2018. In terms of what surprised me the most, I absolutely would echo what Judge Vallarta said, but also a surprise for me, a pleasant surprise for me, was how the transition was more seamless than I expected. I worried that it might take me a long time, having been in an advocate role for 23 years, to transition into my new role, but somehow it was a lot more seamless and a lot faster than I expected it to be. So I hope that that encourages some of you not to worry about that for yourself, and if you have any interest, to put in for it. In terms of what I like the most about the job, the fact that you're not an advocate is a little bit liberating, and when things get tough, I just remind myself that I'm making decisions based on the rule of law and principles of fairness. And that's my role, that's my goal. And that is one of the things that I love the most about this new role. Also, I love interacting with parties, with litigants. Before, I wasn't able to speak with defendants because I was with the DA's office. Now, the fact that I can address the defendants, I enjoy the opportunity to do that. Also, I love mentorship. I love community outreach events. So it's really a wonderful position. And for any of you that are interested, I hope that you're able to join us on this side. I will now turn it to Judge De La Pena. You're on mute.
Hi, I'm Nancy De La Pena, and I'm a judge with the Santa Cruz County Superior Court. And I did not, despite the kind of forum I'm here, did not come to the bench by appointment. I came to the bench by election. And it's a different aspect of how you can get on the bench. But it's certainly one that if it becomes an opportunity for you, please put your hat in and then expect to have to raise a lot of money, which is a difficult thing. But anybody who's out there, I want to tell you, when I joined the court was in the midst of COVID. I went on the bench in January of 2021. Everything was closed down. You weren't talking to attorneys, you were talking to Zoom. It was a very kind of roller coaster type of introduction to what it's like being on the bench. And I hope none of you would have to venture into going on the bench under those circumstances again. What surprised me the most about joining the bench was how much I actually like it. It's such a fulfilling job. There is nothing that I could have done in my career, even though I was a public defender for 30 years, even though I spent time representing child protective services and being with county council on gun violence restraining orders, that has ever given me the opportunity to impact my community and impact individuals as much as being a member of the bench. Because every day people come in to see you and you're required to go ahead and perform justice. And every day I have to remember that. And that's what I consider a great gift to me and a great honor that I'm in this job. So those are the things I like the most. Those are the things that surprise me the most. But I want to wholeheartedly say, every person who's probably on this Zoom is qualified. Okay, put your name in, do it. If you have to run, run.
Thank you so much, Judge De La Pena. So Judge Rodriguez, we're asking you to please introduce yourself by saying what court you're on, when did you join the court, what surprised you when you joined, and name one of the things you like most about your job.
All right, thank you. I apologize, I had some technical difficulties. I'm over in the San Benito Superior Court, and I joined in January of 2019. And in terms of the surprise, I've been really surprised, pleasantly surprised by the strong network of judges in the state, how generous they are in terms of giving me their contact information, guidance, things like that. I was prior to starting, I was a little concerned because I'm one of two judges in this county, and you know, if I need help, have a question about a particular legal issue or case, I'm not just limited to this courthouse because of how great judges are in this state. I'm able to reach out, send emails. I've gone to several now primary assignment orientations. I've used that as an opportunity to connect with other judges. And so I don't feel as isolated, and that's a good feeling. The thing that I like the most, at least day in and day out, I get to focus on doing the right thing. I'm not an advocate for one side or the other, and I have that ability to control and just really focus on doing what's right for that particular case, and not get hung up on you know, whether I'm an advocate for a particular case. I was a litigator prior to becoming a judge, and I think that was one thing that I kind of struggled the most. But now I feel more free, if you will. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judge Rodriguez. So for me, I'm on the Santa Clara County Superior Court. I was appointed October 2001. And what surprised me was basically how much one can do in the community, that you don't have to just stay on the bench. There's so much you can do to do outreach and to help others in the community. And one of the things I like most about the job is connecting people, doing, you know, courts, judges can't fundraise. We can convene though, and we can bring people together from various different walks of life and support each other and educate. So that's one of the things I really like most about this job. So now it's really such an honor for all of us to be able to ask Secretary Cespedes to participate. He was appointed by Governor Newsom in December 2020, and in appointing him, Governor Newsom said that Luis Cespedes has championed the cause of civil rights, equal justice, diversity, and inclusion throughout his storied legal career. Governor Newsom said from his days as a 15-year-old going on strike with the United Farm Workers alongside Cesar Chavez, to his time as a Capitol staffer and decades as an attorney, Luis Cespedes' resilience and compassion have touched countless lives and earned the respect of countless others. Governor Newsom said he was proud to have Secretary Cespedes join the team and help build a bench that reflects the rich diversity of California. I think that Secretary Cespedes is probably, other than the governor, the most hardest working, busiest person in the state. We were on a panel even on his birthday. So he is just so generous with his time, and we're really grateful to have him here. Secretary Cespedes, would you like to say anything by way of introduction before I ask you a few questions?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'd like to first thank the hard workers who are putting this together. David Walker, I really appreciate you taking time to work on our IT and deal with the issues, all the affinity bars and the county bars that were identified earlier. I really want to thank Judge Erica because of your work as co-chair of our California Judicial Mentor Program and for your tireless efforts on so many committees. I think if I'm the second hardest working, you're the to-be hardest working. So thank you. I also see my dear friend, the chair of our California Judicial Mentor Program. Also, by the way, he happened to be elected in LA Superior Court, just like Judge De La Pena, the Honorable Paul Bacigalupo, who chairs our California Judicial Mentor Program. I just want to say what the governor said when he started the program back in July. And this is a quote that he wanted in the press release. California for all means we seek the best and brightest from throughout our great state who wish to serve as judicial officers. This program makes judges and justices accessible to any candidate applying to serve our courts and administer justice fairly, equitably, and honorably, end quote. I really appreciate that you've made reference to our earlier web programs, Judge Yu, as well as the very moving presentation on this imposter phenomenon. But I just want to say by way of introduction that when I met with the governor and he interviewed me, I told him I had been watching judicial appointments for decades, and I have had the privilege of working with all but two of my predecessors, who are now all my mentors. And one of the things I said to him was, if we're going to do California for all, we need to increase the applicant pool. And all of you, except perhaps Judge De La Pena, and maybe she got somebody to convince her to run, almost everyone who's been appointed had a judge see them in court, or maybe at a bar activity or in of court, but mainly in court. Preliminary hearing, a trial, maybe a very complex community property issue. And then the judge afterwards says, Judge Yu, are you interested in applying to the bench? Why don't you see me? After the case is done, and let's talk about it. That's what happens normally. Well, if you follow that pattern without having a program, which is, by the way, not a pipeline to appointment, but a way to encourage people to hit send, we needed to make judges available to everyone from all walks of life. So if you're a solo practitioner and maybe you do transactional work, you might not be in a courtroom. You know the evidence code. You've done some very complex cases, but you might not know a judge, and you wouldn't call a judge, coldly and say, can I meet with you? That's sometimes people do that. Most people would not do that. So we had to open up. If you're a judge and you want to serve on the Court of Appeal, we started out with the pilot program in the first DCA. Now it's in all 6 districts. And I talked to judges, some successful and some not, who said, I wished I would have had a judge who mentored me so I understood that appellate program. So I'm pleased that Justice Martin Jenkins, Justice Lee Edmond, Justice Terry Jackson, and many others have launched that program statewide. So I'm just so honored to be here. I would also look forward to all of you getting a mentor, because when we did the program on the imposter phenomenon, Judge Jeremy Fogel, who is a distinguished federal judge and an academician and a remarkable individual who's now at UC Berkeley School of Law, he concluded, as our expert, that the one way to overcome this imposter phenomenon is get a mentor. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you so much, Secretary Cespedes. What you said is so true, because in my county, there had never been an Asian female bench officer. And so Justice Mahara, Judge Tang Barrett reached out to me and encouraged me, and had to encourage me quite a bit. And so it's nice to now have a process where you don't have to know someone, you don't even have to be in court, right? You can be someone who's an sort of out of court practitioner to bring that diversity, and you can access that information through the CJUMP process. So thank you so much for all you've done to help people reach this information and get a mentor. So Secretary Cespedes, I'm wondering, what qualities is this administration looking for in first a trial court judge, an appellate court justice? Can you please talk about those issues?
Yes, I will, and I will, again, without repeating, you can go online. You should look at Government Code 12011.5, and I think it's subsection D. That set up the Jenny Commission, and it sets forth a wide variety of people that the legislature wants the Jenny Commission to consider, including litigation and non-litigation experience. We have people who say, I've only had 2 trials, but maybe there was a 3-week trial or a 5-week trial and multiple motions of summary judgment and hundreds of depositions. We don't look at just whether you had 10 trials or 100 trials. We want to know that you can handle a courtroom. Do you know the evidence code? Can you deal with a pro se litigant in a landlord-tenant matter? Do you listen proactively? And are you respectful? And can you take the workload? Not everyone is suited to be a judge. It requires a great deal of values. And this is what the governor is looking at. And he said this very publicly at the swearing in of Chief Justice Patricia Guerrero just a few weeks ago. Google knows more. I'm quoting the governor. Google knows more than you do. You'll never be as smart as Google. And with artificial intelligence, I think he's on the right track. So it doesn't matter what law school you went to. It's what you do with your legal education. What have you done that distinguishes you from your colleagues? And what values have you manifested throughout your life? And as my predecessor, Justice Jenkins, said in a speech that I reread over the weekend, the governor told him, and he's told me, because his father was a judge. His father, the late Bill Newsom, served on the trial court in El Dorado County, as well as on the first DCA. And he said that justice for him was in his bones. This is something that, you can't be, it's sort of like a great musician. You have to hear the music all the time. To be rendered justice means that you're committed to making sure that the rule of law is followed, the facts are followed, regardless of what the consequences are. So first is humility, a sense that you're not as smart as Google. You're going to make mistakes. That's why we have a intermediate appellate court system. Humility means that you had life experiences and you understand what it's like to overcome these challenges. Many of you have heard me quote the late Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. when he said, quote, the life of the law is not mere logic, it is experience. What in your life have you done to overcome whatever issues that you've confronted? And believe me, we have a lot of people from all walks of life who have been in the foster care system, who have been the subject of extreme challenges at home and economic and cultural immigrant families, people who have special needs children and parents who've not quite been the kind of support that you need, and they've overcome. And so when they become lawyers, they approach this with great empathy, not sympathy. That's a different concept. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's position and look at the world from their point of view. The problem with so many judges I have confronted over my 40-year career is they look at the world only from their perspective. That's very limited. And you don't know, and not everybody is middle class, has a home, can pay all their utilities, and has not suffered some pain. We have to look at the world broadly. So empathy and humility. Intelligence and intellectual curiosity are key. You have to love the law. And those of you who are on this panel, you do. The career that you've taken is a lot of work. You're putting in a lot of hours, but being a judge requires that intelligence and intellectual curiosity, integrity and honesty in your personal and professional lives. That is a critical part of it, because the public will figure out very quickly whether you're an honest person or not. That's why we have a jury system. We want people who have been committed to their community over a long period of time. So we ask people, what have you done in high school? What did you do in college? What did you do in law school? When you became a lawyer, were you out there in the community helping others? Or was the world still only revolving around you? And we understand that for many women, you are disproportionately tasked with doing many things. So community service is very, very broad. We're looking at people who have courage. They're not looking over their shoulder, wondering if they're going to get papered or have a 170.6 filed against them. Courage is integral to judicial independence. So we want people with great courage. We want people who are excellent communicators, orally and in writing, and can explain complex legal matters to litigants and make sure that litigants understand what they're signing, particularly when it's a settlement agreement on a landlord-tenant issue or any other complex matter. And we want people who have a commitment to public service and the hard work that it entails. I called a friend to vet a candidate. It was a Sunday. He had just been appointed very, very prominent criminal defense lawyer. It was 4 o'clock on Sunday. I figured he was relaxing. You know what? He was in his chambers reading files for the next morning's family law, because he says, I'm not used to family law. I want to be up in it. And I don't want to have anybody not know that I read their file. And he says he does it from 4 till 9 o'clock on Sundays. Now, I use that as an example because that's exactly the kind of people we want. When the presiding judge says you're going to family law or you're going to traffic, you don't say, hey, you're wasting my time because I'm a former U.S. attorney. Put me in arraignments. No. We want people who, when they say you need you here, you're going there. So I would dispute the notion that everyone listening is capable of doing that. It is a high calling. And we want people, as the governor said, best and the brightest first, and diversity of professions, and of course, making California for all a reality.
Thank you so much, Secretary Cespedes. In listening to you, it's so inspiring because, I became a judge in 2001. And so I've seen so much change over the time. And people shouldn't feel daunted, because if they bring those qualities and they're recognized, they're appointed, those qualities are actually honed and focused through what we're doing in judicial education, which has really changed over the last 20 years. So we teach judges about emotional intelligence, about ACEs, the adverse childhood experience. We actually even give judges the opportunity to take that test so they can understand what our litigants, lawyers, staff, and ourselves have experienced as children and how that impacts us. We talk about sort of different cultures, including the culture of poverty, and we talk about how to make our courts more trauma-informed for our users. So those things that you bring to bear really will dovetail with the trends that we see as jurisprudence gets better and better and serves people better. So thank you, Secretary Cespedes. It's so good to hear from you.
Thank you.
I want to make sure people know that they can put questions in the chat. And then also, before we turn to our specific local mentor programs, my presiding judge reminded me that one of our commissioners was just recently appointed last week to a judicial position. So Santa Clara County Superior Court just posted an open commissioner position, and that is definitely a good way for people to get experience. I see Judge Vallarta nodding, and so I'm going to go to her. She's going to share screen. They have a fabulous judicial mentor webpage. It's Monterey Superior Court. It includes links to various different entities like the Judicial Nominee Evaluation Commission. And so I'm going to go to Judge Vallarta, who will kind of share screen, show us what's going on in her county's mentor program, and tell you how to access a mentor if you're interested in applying to the Monterey Superior Court. Thank you so much, Judge Vallarta. And I'll turn my camera off so people can see the link.
Thank you, Judge Yu and Secretary Cespedes for that amazing perspective, kind of global perspective I think you've shared. So I'm going to start sharing my screen in a moment, and I want to just say what you see on the Monterey County webpage is really the fruit of the work that Judge Bacigalupo has been doing, and so many other judges throughout the state. We've adapted it somewhat for our county, but the themes that you see in the county of Monterey are echoed really throughout the state. So let me begin my screen sharing, and here we go. So I'm hoping everybody can see that. If I could just have a nod from someone. Nahal, okay, great. So here is the Judicial Mentorship Program page for Monterey County. The way I found this is I Googled County of Monterey Superior Court, and then I typed in the search box Judicial Mentorship, and that'll take you to this page. And so this page gives you a general overview of the program, which has been described by Judge Yu and the Secretary, the goal to see qualified, inclusive, and diverse judicial candidates. Our program has a mentor-judge component, which includes a few judges from our county that have signed up for this. In particular, you'll see here under program leadership, Judge Vasquez, who was the original chair of this committee, Judge O'Keefe, Judge Mark Hood, and myself are all kind of part of the leadership team, but really we can, many judges on our bench have indicated their support for the program. So the way the program works is we have the committee, we do things like what we're doing today just to get the word out. And we have a mentor committee. So the first step, how does this work? You have to fill out an application form. You can, of course, always informally approach a judge in our county if you prefer to do that. But in order to kind of open the door more widely, if you're interested in pursuing this, is to apply. So you have to be an attorney in good standing with at least 10 years. That's a basic requirement for any of the positions. And you have to fill out the application form. So that is on this page. And let me just show you on the page, there's several really great links. So the first link is the mentorship frequently asked questions. So this might answer some basic questions about how does it work? Is there a deadline? The answer is no, you can apply at any time. What are the qualifications? How are you paired, etc. Another link is the actual application form, which we basically need just your contact information and a little bit about your background and what you might be looking for in the mentor. So that's that form can be used for that purpose. There's also links on the Monterey County page for the state application, which Judge Yu has been demoing as well, and also a link to the State Bar Jenny page, which is also really terrific, terrific application. So let me try to share those. See here, it didn't work. Let me go back. So the judicial appointment. So this is the statewide application, which is 75 or so questions, very detailed questionnaire. And then the last link that I just want to show is the bottom one, judicial nominee evaluation form. So this describes the whole Jenny Commission process. When the governor makes a referral of a candidate to be evaluated, this page gives you great information about how that process works, who's on the Jenny Commission, how do they function? And so that's very, very helpful and informative. So that's all on our page, but really it can be used for folks from any county. And I'll leave it there, Judge Yu, and turn it back over to you for our next stop on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Vallarta. Your webpage is just really amazing, and a good place for people to start. We've had a couple questions. So before we talk about the Santa Clara process, I do want to say for the C-Jump program, once one has put in their application, then the mentoring process would not really go forward. But that after you've put in your application, there is mentoring available through different affinity bar associations. And there's sort of a thought process behind that. If we have time, we can explain. So once you put in your application, then you wouldn't be getting a mentor through the C-Jump program, but maybe different courts, which are able to do their own process, have their own sort of spin on their mentor programs. And Judge Iravani Sani will talk a little bit about Santa Clara's spin, and definitely the affinity bar associations, or the affinity judicial associations offer mentoring. So I think you know about the affinity bar associations, but there's definitely affinity judicial associations. There's what CAPAJA for AAPI attorneys, that's California Asian American Pacific Islander Judicial Association. There's different associations for Black judges, for LGBTQI judges. So reach out to your mentors and they can direct you, or you can reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat soon, and you can reach out to me and I can guide you to those other associations. Now we have a really great question for Secretary Cespedes, if he's ready for a question. And so that question is, what's the difference between people whom we might choose to ask to be our reference and those whom we might ask to write letters of recommendation? And is it true that judicial mentors cannot be either our reference or people who write letters of recommendation? Secretary Cespedes?
Yes, the mentor program is designed not to encourage people to become the supporters. It really is a separate entity once that's done. The 5 references are really critical because they're people that the Jenny Commission will call, as well as members of the JSAC. So your 5 references are really important. Believe it or not, I've had some people I've called and they say, oh, so-and-so put me on as a reference. I had no idea. Now that's mistake number 1, right? Because you want to make sure that the 5 references know you as well as could be, to highlight whatever you've written. And so be very, very careful with the references. Make sure you talk to them and make sure you got to have their permission. That seems obvious, but I think it's something that I've seen too often. The letters of recommendation are, as Justice Jenkins and I and Justice Groban and Justice Baxter, all the other prior judicial appointment secretaries have said in their comment remarks to the public, it's not the quantity of letters. You want people who can write about the characters I just talked about. You want people who know you not as a friend, but they know personally enough to share a story about who you are, as well as speak to your professional abilities and how they've witnessed them. How long have they known you? Those letters are very important. Soliciting letters just for the sake of it is not something that's helpful. It's important that people write a letter that is impactful. I get a lot of letters, and the impactful letters are in the minority. We want people who can write about who you are as a person, so we can put the pieces together. Invariably, there is a story that you have, and that story should be told by you and by people who know you. So that's important. And I think it's helpful to know that your PDQ is read not just by members of the Jenny Commission, but everybody on the 8 judicial selection advisory committees. If we have a contract with the county bar, like Santa Clara County, the Judicial Review Committee will review it. Our office will review it. If you're applying to the Court of Appeal, that PDQ will be published to the members of the Commission on Judicial Appointments. So how you write it and what you say and the references you put there really is why it takes time, and why mentoring and getting people to comment about your suitability or your challenges is so important. Mentoring is so critical so that you have somebody objectively commenting on your background.
Thank you so much, Secretary Cespedes. There's also a question about whether or not the mentor committees would just accept someone's PDQ as an application to participate in the mentor program. And the answer is no. I'm so sorry. I know it takes time to fill out that application, but the PDQ, but the application for the mentor program is actually really important. It helps those people who chair those programs understand which mentor to give you that will not be someone you're appearing in front of. So basically, it's like a conflicts check. So those applications aren't that onerous, and we do ask you to fill that out, because otherwise we might be creating conflicts of interest for the judge who would be your mentor. And I see Judge Iravani Sani nodding, and I'm going to ask her if she would like to share screen and talk about the Santa Clara program, which is available for those applying in Santa Clara, as well as those who might be willing to or wanting to apply for San Benito or Santa Cruz. So go ahead, Judge Iravani Sani.
Certainly. Thank you, Judge Yu. I also wanted to respond to the question from Mr. Van E regarding the mentor application program. It is very short. It's just a one page. It is nothing close to the PDQ. And also maybe Secretary Cespedes can clarify this for all of us, but it was my understanding that once somebody has submitted their application, that they're not necessarily the ideal candidate for the judicial mentorship program. These are for people that are thinking about applying for the bench, not necessarily if you've already submitted. So perhaps you don't even need to benefit from the judicial mentorship program if you've already gone through the application process. Secretary Cespedes, would you like to address that?
Yeah, Judge, that's correct. This is for people who have not yet sent in their PDQ, correct?
Okay. So now I will go forth and share my screen for Santa Clara County. Here is our wonderful detail-packed website, which can be daunting, but I think the quickest way is to simply go to the search part and put in Judicial Mentorship Program, and it wants me to verify I'm not a robot. It didn't do it last time, but problems of the real world. Okay, so basically, in the interest of time, I'm just going to talk you through it. When you put in the Judicial Mentorship Program, you have to show them you're not a robot, and then you'll end up coming into this page, which is Mentor Committee. And then a little bit further down, you see the PDQ icon and a form. It's a very, very simple, brief form. It's just 2 pages long, and it also asks for your resume. And then after that, you submit and you get assigned to mentor. As indicated, we want to make sure that you are not placed with someone who you routinely appear in front of. Recently, or I think it was last year, the California Judicial Ethics Advisory Opinion gave the advisory opinion that we want to make sure that there's no conflict of interest, no appearance of impropriety. So if you're arguing motions in limine in front of one judge in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they're mentoring you on your judicial mentorship application, of course, that creates an impression of conflict of interest, even if both parties feel like they can be disciplined. So when we review the application, we find out, okay, you're a family law practitioner. It's best if your mentor, for example, serves in the criminal division, or if you're a civil attorney, and it's best to have your mentor in the criminal division. So please make sure to let us know what areas you practice, not just your primary practice, but all areas that you've practiced in. And we will assign you to one. Also, in terms of what to expect and what not to expect, all of that information we shared in the link that you'll be getting, if you haven't already, from the February 2nd, 2022 event that CJUMP had. One of them, for example, is that don't expect your mentors to proofread your application. Don't expect your mentors to do a mock interview. because we want everybody to be their authentic selves. We don't want all of you to go in front of Secretary Cespedes and kind of come up with the same canned answer. So there's things that you should know what to expect from the program and what not to expect from the program, and all of those details will be provided to you in a separate link of a pre-recorded session that we had.
Thank you so much, Judge Iravani Sani. So I'll just go aside. The first link on my background is a link to that February 2022 webinar, but I'm also updating the chat for those who come later. So you can actually have an active link, I think, in the chat. I tested it, I think it works, to that webinar. And then also there's an active link to the application itself. And then I also just put in a link to the California Supreme Court Committee on Judicial Ethics opinions in case you're interested in that opinion. So we have another question. If you're applying for judicial appointment and are a current court commissioner in and for a court that has many judicial openings, does it lessen the chance of being selected for an appointment? So I guess that goes to Secretary Cespedes, and I can say that again. If you're applying for judicial appointment and are a current court commissioner, so you're sitting as a commissioner in a court that has a lot of judicial openings, does that make it better or worse for you to be appointed? And I guess that part of the thought is, if you take a commissioner and you move them to a judicial seat, you still have the same amount of vacancies. So is the process more interested in filling the vacancies, or is it okay to move a commissioner to a seat, even though you'll still have kind of the same amount of open seats, one being a commissioner seat, not a seat that the governor would appoint to?
The simple answer is no. We work closely with the presiding judges, but let me just say that the commissioners are limited. They can only handle certain amounts of cases unless there's parties that stipulate. So already the Superior Court is in need of full Superior Court judges if there's so many vacancies. The real issue for us is has the person performed their duties as a judicial officer consistent with those values that we discussed, and how successful have they been? I agree with Judge Yu, and if there is a vacancy now in, for example, in Santa Clara County with the elevation of Commissioner Benjamin Williams, seek that out. It's a great way for you to be interviewed by all the members of the trial court. They'll assess and they'll elect you if you meet those minimum criteria. And then certainly from our perspective, if you've been a judge pro tem, as I've served for many years, or a judicial officer, it does give us a insight into your ability to handle the job. Now, obviously in smaller counties, I know San Benito County, we were very concerned because we did elevate a commissioner to fill the vacancy in San Benito County, and I worked with Judge Rodriguez to make sure that he had somebody to back up. So in the smaller counties, I definitely want to make sure that we're not creating any conflict, and Judge Rodriguez was really on top of it. So it's important for me to know the needs of the court as well. The other thing I might add is sometimes the court commissioners have been in family law, and a judge with experience in family law has retired. I know that in advance because I talk to the judges. I want to know what needs there are in the court. So we get down to the very basics of what we need to do. And as I said before, smaller counties are always a challenge. Judge Rodriguez and his colleague in San Benito, they handle everything. So we have to make sure that in smaller counties, we have judges that are extraordinary. They have to handle a preliminary hearing in the morning and maybe a probate in the afternoon. They don't have the luxury of having one division handle all matters. So that's a long-winded answer, but the answer is no.
Secretary, we have another question for you, which I think is really interesting also. So the question is, stylistically for the application, should an applicant's writing be more formal and akin to how a judicial opinion might read, or can it be slightly more colloquial for the reader to get a sense of the applicant's personality?
Well, let me tell you, I have read applications sometimes 2 or 3 times because they're written so well. Their prose is amazing. The stories that they tell are remarkable. I I often said, gee, that would be a great autobiography. I've read others that we know they spent 2 weeks on, maybe 3 weeks in between a trial. Remember the only advice I'd give is, remember, it's not, Mark Twain didn't say it necessarily, but it's always attributed to him. I would have written you a shorter letter if I had more time. Get that through your heads. I would have written you a shorter letter if I had more time. This PDQ requires great thought. That's why the mentorship program is so important. How you write is an expression of who you are. So if you write formally, write your application formally. If you write colloquially, write it colloquially. If you write in poetry, put some poetry in there. I mean, it really is about you and your authenticity. It's your story that we're trying to ascertain and the experiences that you have. By the way, when you choose the cases, that there's a question about what are the 10 most significant cases? Think about that. I will tell you that the candidates that I really appreciate are when they give me some thought about why they chose those cases, a win, lose, or draw. So there's a lot in the application that requires great thought, but I would write in your authentic voice, period.
Thank you, Secretary Cespedes. One of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain is, choosing the right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug.
The other famous quote is, truth is such a rare commodity, I use it sparingly.
So let's go to Judge De La Pena to talk about the Santa Cruz process and how do you access mentors in Santa Cruz if you don't want to, or if you want to augment using the Santa Clara County Mentor Program. Judge De La Pena.
So I consider this sort of like a three-pronged process. The first part is me going out, as all of my colleagues going out and trying to beat everywhere I can to find possible candidates and applicants for the judicial appointment process, because they don't always necessarily sit, as it was for me, in a public defender's office or a district attorney's office. It might be a family law office. It might be a senior legal services, going out and trying to generate an interest in expanding what our judiciary looks like in Santa Cruz County. The second is to realize that we have a relatively small bench, and our judicial officers do transfer between types of cases quite frequently. And we have a master calendar system so that we might hear a civil matter or we might hear a criminal matter. And so I explained to all the potential people who are interested in possibly applying that, look, you can come and talk to every judicial officer. I have spoken to every judicial officer. Every one of them is willing to meet with you, whether they know you personally or not, to talk about being a judge in Santa Cruz County. 2, if you want to do the more formal process, we have the more formal mentorship program, which everybody has been discussing, and that application's on our website. But 3, if you want to be able to preserve the right to be able to have a judicial officer that you want to talk to, be a reference, then Santa Clara County has graciously offered to assign a mentor to you that might not lend itself to having one of those conflicts so that you can't talk to that judicial officer about the process. And so we've tried to make this 3-prong approach to how we diversify our bench, because we want people who may have been in foster care, who may be eligible to come to our bench, who might be the first immigrant to be on the Santa Cruz County bench. I myself am the first LGBTQ member of our bench. I'm Latinx. We want to expand it so that when people come before our court, they see that our court represents the diversity of not only our community, our state, and our country. And so that's why I tried to get out there. I go and talk to women lawyers. I go and talk to our trial board. I go and talk to our local bar association. And we will have and do have openings, and we're going to have more openings over the next couple of years. But I want to tell everybody who's thinking about applying, start thinking early. Start making those connections early. Start thinking about what you might like or are afraid of doing as a judicial officer, and start to deal with it now, because this is not a 2-week process. This can be a multi-year process, And you have to be willing to stand in there and be in there like it's a long cost jury trial that keeps getting continued and continued and continued. You don't give up, you keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Judge De La Pena. We have a couple questions, one about, which we'll probably leave to the end, but this one is about the election process. So I know for the Santa Clara County Mentor Program, we will pair people with a mentor who has been elected to office so that you can have that experience and insight. There's a question about asking to tell advice for people who are running for judge, but this program is really more focused on the application process. So I'm just going to ask Judge De La Pena and then also Judge Rodriguez, how does someone access a mentor if they want to run for election in your county? If you could just share that so they know where to go if they need that advice.
Omar, Judge Rodriguez, you want to take that first?
Thank you, Judge.
In San Benito County, there are only 2 judges, and as alluded earlier, we're very small, and so I ran for office, and I'm available to chat with anyone who's willing to reach out to me and wants to have that conversation. I think my experience, San Benito County, last I checked, we're around 60,000 people. And so running for office in San Benito County is going to be a very different experience than running in Santa Clara or even Monterey or Santa Cruz. So I'm more than willing to sit down and chat either in person or on the phone and talk about my experience. We're so small, I was able to go door to door. And I think I went to about maybe 10,000 homes it was 2 election cycles, but it was a lot of walking. Wore through one pair of shoes, but it's unique. It's a unique experience, and there are certain pros and cons with regard to that. And I'm just going to go ahead and use that as an opportunity to kind of jump in and describe and highlight the smallness of the community, because I have come in contact with a lot of people who I met on the campaign trail. And I go out in the community, people will recognize me, and either from when I ran for office, went to their home, knocked on the door and asked for their vote, or I see them in court. So either they, and people are pretty cordial, at least here. And for the most part, they'll acknowledge me and move on. When I first started, I was very worried about public safety, just in terms of, people approaching me, talking to me about cases. They're unhappy with a ruling, that they would say something or do something. But I've gotten comfortable. Like I said, I've been on the bench since January 2019. And so I'm comfortable with that. And I feel like being in a small community, being in a small court, I have certain advantages. I see some of the same people, parties in cases, and I may see them, like currently my assignment, family law, delinquency. I handle criminal cases, misdemeanor felonies, civil and limited, probate, guardianship, conservatorships. And so you'll have the same parties in my court, but in a different capacity. And I think I'm able to do my job a little bit better because I have a better understanding. They're not just a criminal defendant, for example. I may see their children in delinquency court. I previously had dependency, that assignment, and you may see the same parties in those cases as well. I also previously handled restraining order hearings, and so you touch lives in different ways. And to be honest, I like that. I like working in a small court, and that's a different experience than if I were to be a judge in Santa Clara County, for example. Not to pick on Santa Clara, but you guys are the biggest guys in the room right now. And so each experience for a judge, I think, is pretty unique depending on the county. And so I think that's something to consider. If you want to have one assignment and do that for several years, if not the entire judicial career, that's something that you should steer clear of San Benito County because you need to be able to handle almost everything that comes in through the door. And I'm also presiding judge right now, which I didn't know what really that entailed prior to me becoming presiding judge. And then we'll rotate every 2 years. And so, when I'll be presiding judge, and then when I'm not, it'll be a 2-year stint, and then I'll come back and be presiding judge again. And so that's just something to consider. That's like an added layer that I think people, at least when I was an attorney, that never occurred to me in terms of what it's like to be a judge. And I think that's something that people, I want to highlight that so that people know what they're walking into. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so great, Judge Rodriguez, because you're also highlighting the various different ways that people can take leadership roles and policy setting roles as a judge. And that's just so important. Judge De La Pena, did you want to briefly add anything about the election process? Because we're really not focusing on that. Go ahead.
And I agree. But what I will say is that 3 of the current judges in the Santa Cruz County bench are here because of election. All 3 of us are women. The last elected judge just recently retired, but it has not been an uncommon way for judges to come onto the Santa Cruz County bench, particularly diversity candidates, because it's been such a tough road here. I will say, please, if you have a question about an election, feel free to give me a call. I'll tell you what's involved, in essence, in trying to become an elected judicial officer. I won't mentor you in that, but I'll kind of give you a little bit and maybe be able to connect you with some of the other people in your county who might be able to be of assistance. But let's go back to what this program is really about. Judge Yu.
Thank you so much, Judge De La Pena. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we're shifting gears to asking our panelists to give advice and share some words of encouragement. This dovetails to something I wanted to talk about, which jumps on what Judge De La Pena shared. She said, this is a years-long process. And so for me, I'm just going to share too much information. I'm really anal retentive, and I like lists. And I was in a trial firm that I was the only woman partner, and it was kind of macho, like they kept lists of their trials. It turned out to be a great thing because I kept lists of every jury trial I had, all the lawyers, who was the judge. And when you're filling out your PDQ, which is personal data questionnaire, you actually need to have that information. And in the California Constitution, you must be a lawyer in the state of California for 10 years before you can apply. So it's very hard in a busy life to remember so far back. So I think that, what Judge De La Pena said is so true. Keep those lists, keep information so you can go back, because not only will you have to give the name of the lawyers you tried cases with, you'll have to give their contact information. So it's so helpful to go to the State Bar website to do that. So we're going to turn now to sort of advice and words of encouragement. And I'm also going to weave in a couple questions, which you can answer or not if you don't want to. So the first question is, can you talk about what was maybe one of the greatest challenges you encountered when you became a judge? And or how has being a judge impacted our lives within our communities? And then also just general words of advice. So we're going to go first to Secretary Cespedes and ask if you would like to take any of those questions. What's advice or words of encouragement?
Well, first of all, let me just thank members of the panel. If this is my last opportunity to thank, it's always great for me. I learned so much from listening to you all. The governor is committed to making sure that our bench reflects the richness of our state. In Santa Cruz County, the first Filipino-American was appointed. He's in Department 10, Judge Jerry Van Leeuwen. More recently, another commissioner, Catherine Hansen, in Department 1. I could go on, and you saw the numbers of women that have increased. And I just wanted to say that in the history of California, we have an opportunity to watch in real time an extraordinary national leader, the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Patricia Guerrero, who has demonstrated in her short time that not only is she extraordinarily gifted in managing a very complex court, but she has been a wonderful public facing of the court. Those of you who decide to become judges, I would advise you, it's not an 8 to 5. Don't think that you're going to become a judge so you can go to Judicate West and start billing $1,000 an hour to do private judging. That's not your destiny. Your destiny really is to fulfill what the founding fathers said in Federalist 51, which is democracy, as Madison said. The whole essence of democracy is to seek justice. And we have watched in our own country, and we're watching today, an unprecedented attack on our rule of law and our judiciary. But in California, we don't have these problems. We don't have acrimony about judges because, for the most part, 99.999% of our judges are outstanding individuals, remarkable people. I'm honored every day to meet prospective candidates. We are a rich state because of our people. And remember this, the law always goes west to east. It doesn't come east to west. Take any subject, whether it's school desegregation, product liability, diversity in terms of criminal justice reform, all of it, it goes west to east. So if you become a Court of Appeal judge or one day on the Supreme Court or a trial court judge, you are joining a legacy of some of the greatest legal minds in the history of our country. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. And to have the privilege to sit in a courtroom and administer justice is a remarkable, remarkable feat for you and for your families and for our communities. So I would encourage all of you who are listening, this is a high and noble calling. Remember, democracy is designed for us to seek justice, and in a peaceful way, and in a way that adheres to the best of each of us.
Thank you, Secretary Cespedes. It's always so inspiring to hear you speak. Before we go to the other judges, there's a quick question, which is, if you're a resident in one county, could you still apply for a seat in another county? And the answer is yes. Actually, Judge Quentin Kopp sued the state of California to make sure that you didn't have to sit in the county where you apply. So you can sit in one county and apply for a seat in another county. So thank you again, Secretary Cespedes. We're so honored to have you here. And I'm going to go now to the other judges, and just to let them know, because there's so many questions, I did put the questions in the chat so you can, capture them. And Judge Rodriguez, since you went last time, I'm going to check and see if you'd like to go first. You want to talk about, any greatest challenge? How's the work impacted you in your community? And any words of encouragement and advice?
In terms of the challenge, because of the nature of the work here in this small court or county, it was really overwhelming starting. It's less so now, you get used to it, but the first 6 months were tough, and eventually you settle into the role. There are a lot. It's not just subject matter material that you're expected to know. You're expected to know how to manage a courtroom, how to manage attorneys, how to manage parties, how to manage and deal with cases involving self-represented parties. And it's just, it makes you stretch your muscles a little bit. And so that it's still challenging today. Every year or more than that, the laws are changing, and you have to stay on top of that. And we don't get to really specialize in one area of law. We may have a preference and enjoy certain areas of law, but we have to stay on top of everything. And so that's been I think a big challenge of mine. With regard to how the job has impacted you within your communities, as Secretary Cespedes said, we're judges. Like, we're judges all the time. And so when I go out in the community, they say there's a judge, there goes Judge Rodriguez. And so, like I said, I ran for office, so I put my name out there, I put my face out there because I wanted people to know who I was. And so when I go out, I drop my son off at school in the morning, people see me, and sometimes they don't necessarily know who I am, but I'm familiar to them. And I just kind of assumed that they know who I am. And there are people who may not acknowledge me. And I kind of assume that, that like a lot of people who, when I go out in public, they know who I am. And it's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's more of adjustment. And, with that, what is it? Just, I guess another thing, part of that is when I say something, now that I'm judge, even if it's in a private capacity, that means something more than when I was just an attorney. I don't say just an attorney, but when I was an attorney. And so people receive that a little bit differently, and
That's
have to
a
be
good-
mindful of that.
Good point.
Because I may take my robe off physically, but I'm always Judge Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Except to my friends, family, people who are close to me.
Thank
they'll
you,
call me
Judge
Noah.
Rodriguez. Yeah, that's a really good point. Did you want to quickly give any words of encouragement in the we have 7 minutes left. So any words of encouragement, Judge Rodriguez, before we go to the others?
Keep an open mind. I never thought that I'd be judge, never thought I'd run for office. And, I was a civil litigator, didn't have any experience with the majority of things that I handle. But if you give yourself a chance, you'll be surprised at what you're able to accomplish.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We know you juggle so much as the presiding judge and basically, one of 2 judges in your court. So thank you so much, Judge Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Judge De La Pena, we have about 7 minutes left. So would you like to answer any of the questions in conclusion?
Unmute. First of all, I'd like to thank Governor Newsom for putting together and having the foresight to think that this might be an important way in which to outreach to individuals who might never have thought about being a judge. And that took a lot of intuition and innovation to try this process. I want to thank Secretary Cespedes for his efforts, because he did appoint my good friend Jerry Van Leeuwen to our bench, and I appreciate that. And we've had a chance to have Judge Hanson join us, because those are the types of things that we're looking for, which is expanding what our bench looks like. If you are a practitioner, wherever you are, whatever type of practice you do, remember, you're an attorney. You have the 10 years. Okay, then look at yourself and decide, is this really an undertaking I want to do? Do I want to take on the responsibility to our community of being one of the faces of justice? Do I want to go into my Home Depot or to my local taqueria and have people recognize me, whether I've done something that they like or they don't? The other day I was grocery shopping and I got stopped. These are all aspects of being a judge, but the most important thing is that you are expanding your community involvement in a way that very few people would have the opportunity to do. Because in essence, judges, if we think about judges in our old senses, we are responsible for administering justice to our communities. And it is an honor to be able to do it. It's an opportunity to be able to do it. And please join those. If you think you're the person who can do this, please be one of those applicants. The greater our applicant pool, the greater the opportunity Secretary Cespedes and Governor Newsom have to be able to begin to pull different faces, different perspectives, different life experiences, and to insert them in our communities to be able to be those implementers of justice. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Judge De La Pena. And I really liked your 3-point plan. It was just so clear and well stated. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in Santa Cruz. Judge Iravani Sani, we have about 4 minutes left. Would you like to take 2 of those minutes?
Sure, I'll go quick. And in the interest of time, I won't repeat the sentiments that have already been expressed, because I think I would endorse them all. What I would say in terms of a challenge has been maintaining my humility, but respecting the formalities. That's been one of the challenges. I'm always introducing myself, for example, as my name, Nahal Iravani Sani. That's who I've been. That's who I am my entire life. But all of a sudden you shed your first name. You're a judge wherever you go. You have to get comfortable with that. And you also have to enforce it as uncomfortable as it may be, especially within the court community. With respect to how it's impacted me in my communities, I feel that I think those of you that are thinking about putting in the bench, you've probably had a very respectable career, and that's what has enticed you to be in applying for the bench anyway. So I would say just, take the job seriously, even as an attorney. Don't take yourself seriously, because humility is a very, very big part of this. But conduct yourself at all times as if you're in the public eye. You're all attorneys, you're all officers of the court. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden when you put on the bench, you're somebody different. Wherever you are, just know that people are looking at you in an elevated way. You're an attorney of the state of California. And I think if you conduct yourself that way, then becoming a judge will be more of a smooth transition. And then my words of encouragement is don't get in your own way, because I think I was getting in my own way. I was self-selecting out. As an Iranian American, there were no other Iranian Americans on the bench in Santa Clara County or throughout the state that I knew of. So I didn't aspire to be a judge because I didn't see anybody that looked like me to kind of plant that in my mind. And I kept self-selecting out, even though people kept encouraging me. So please don't self-select out. And if you're somebody that doesn't have too many people with whose backgrounds resonate with you, you can be that person.
Thanks so much, Judge Irvani Sani. It's so nice to be your colleague and work with you on the same court. It's been really nice to get to know you and be your colleague. And Judge Vallarta, I'm sorry that you're going last, and please don't feel rushed. Some people will be able to stay a little longer, and your words are very important. So would you like to answer those questions or give us some advice?
Thank you so much, Judge Yu. Well, I think everyone has been so eloquent, and I shared many of the same experiences. It's hard at the beginning. It gets better. It's incredibly rewarding. We all come from diverse backgrounds. My background was an immigrant, non-English speaking family. Wasn't even born in this country, but grew up here. And when you start talking to small groups of students or whoever, it's really impactful when you share some of the details of that background and that you have made it to this point. So I want to just encourage everyone, take advantage of the Judicial Mentorship Program or reach out to judges in your community. It's perfectly fine, as has been mentioned, to apply to more than one county. All of you could apply to all 4 counties if you had an interest in doing so. As a plug for Monterey, we're a small, collegial, collaborative, mid-sized county. There's about 20 or so judicial officers. It's really a sweet size, and it's not too big, not too little. That's kind of been a great blessing for me. Get involved in your local bar associations. We have a temporary judge program. That's also a great way to get involved and kind of dip your toes in the water, if you will. Thank you, Judge Yu. I think I'll leave it there and we can end on time.
Thank you, Judge Vallarta. And your webpage is just really, truly amazing and helpful. And I've had the opportunity, since I'm doing some statewide work, to visit multiple courts and speak to many benches. And you're right, whenever I go to Monterey and speak to your court, it's just so impressive. You have statewide leaders, and everyone's just so nice. And it's such a beautiful venue to be appointed in. And so I just want to thank our speakers and thank you so much for being here. We are recording this, so we will post the recording, the video, on the Santa Clara site and the Monterey site soon. I put my email address in the chat. As a member of the CJUMP Executive Committee, I can't be a mentor, so I'm happy to kind of direct you to various different mentor programs or try to guide your process so you can connect to mentors. We're so excited that you're here. I feel like being a judge really is the best job in the world. You get to help people, you have a sense of purpose, you have job satisfaction, and you get to be a part of something so important that's much bigger than yourself. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Secretary Cespedes. Would you like to make any words of closing, Secretary?
I just want to echo again, please take advantage of the mentorship. Do not self-select out. You'll have a wonderful career as a judge. I've always enjoyed my service as a pro tem referee and a settlement conference judge. It gives you great satisfaction to really help people at their most vulnerable time in their lives. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to serve. And I look forward to maybe interviewing 1, 2, 3, or all of you down the road. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And Dave, will you save the recording or should I?
I'll take care of it, Judge.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. And thank you to Dave Walker. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Dave.